reality in life checks you when you least expect it. Nobody has to do it for you. Nobody's got to give you the lecture talk.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the doors just close.
Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Inner West Hemp. Be sure to visit them online for all your CBD needs. This is the same company that I use daily, from tinctures to rub-ons to CBD gummies. Some of their products are even USADA approved. Be sure to use the code JAMP, 15% off at checkout. What's up, guys? Today's guest is a professional fight coordinator and choreographer. Please welcome to the JAMCast, Emmanuel Manzanares.
Hello.
What's up, Manny? How are you, dog?
Good, man. How are you?
Dude, that was quite the tongue twister on the name intro. I'm not going to lie.
I know. I got a long-ass name.
I'm kind of proud that I hit that one.
You did? I'm proud, too.
Oh, it's so funny, man. Well, welcome to LA, man. It's super cool that you are here because a lot of people may not know this, but you actually relocated to Chicago.
Yeah.
What, a year ago? Maybe
last
two?
Last July. I moved back to Chicago for family reasons, just because my wife was here with my kid.
Yep.
And just doing everything by herself.
Better support system.
Yeah. So we have my family back in Chicago, got a house.
Yes.
Being an adult, which is kind of scary.
Crazy, man.
But it's good. We're in a good neighborhood. It's chill.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going great.
That's super dope, man. It's super cool to see you like make that full circle transition where you did it on your own terms.
Yeah.
A lot of other people move from their hometown to LA and they get eaten up alive and then spit back.
Totally.
But this time, you came out here, established yourself, started your family, and now you're relocating, on your own terms.
Yeah, and it's good. And I made sure to check in, with other coordinators and stuff, just to kind of get their info and what they think too, because I know some coordinators live out of town
totally
as well, and also for family reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really glad that I got a lot of support, which is great.
Yeah, we're definitely at the point in our careers now where fortunately most times you get sent or you get brought out of town anyways for work. So it's like you can technically be anywhere as long as you stay in touch and keep those relationships. So
exactly.
Dang, that's super cool, man. How was Chicago?
Good. I've always kind of gone back and forth, so I'm not too away from the cold. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But every now and then, it's a little bit of adjustment.
Yeah,
but,
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
I mean, it's just still technically ending winter out here, and I'm already rocking the shorts.
Yeah.
Like showing skin on the JAMCast. So,
right.
Yeah, Chicago's one of my favorite cities I've ever worked in.
Yeah, that's right. We were there together at one point.
I was gonna say I got to meet you in person before you moved out to LA.
Yep.
When I was working on a little film known as Transformers 4.
Yeah.
And,
I know, that's right.
It was like the first time I got to meet you and Sean Bernal.
Yep.
And basically, like, you guys were the Chicago scene, with the exception of all the kids that train at Sharky's Karate School.
Right.
So a lot of people that we've already featured and talked about on the JAMCast before are students of Sensei Sharky. Mm-hmm. But you guys were part of your own group that wasn't that.
Yep.
And you guys were known as...
LBP. Lazy Brown Productions.
Yes.
And... I made that name up because I had a buddy of mine in high school. He wanted to be a writer, and I kind of wanted to be a director, right? We just talked about film stuff and whatever. And because he's Puerto Rican and Filipino, and I'm Mexican, we were talking about, like, well, if we ever made a company together or made something, it'd be kind of funny if we said, like, Lazy Brown Productions, right? Because of the whole stereotype.
100%.
We're just chilling, but actually we were working our asses off. So it just kind of stuck. And then the irony of that is all my high school friends that helped me start off making shorts and stuff, like how you and Vlad used to do back in the day. They were same thing, like Puerto Rican, Chinese, Cambodian, Filipino, like all these different races, because you're just guys that want to do martial arts and
100%. Yeah. Hey, Connor, go to that list really quick while Manny's talking.
Oh shit.
And what's funny is when you're talking about the LPB stunts.
Yeah.
What's the second one there, Connor? Say. All right. Well, we will get to one of these, but I know that a bit ago on your Instagram, you had actually posted one of the first fights ever.
Yeah.
From your channel way back in the days.
Way back in the days.
Which is crazy to think about.
We were doing stuff. Yes. I know, man. It's like, we were shooting stuff on Sony Handycams.
I know.
And like tapes.
And I'll throw it on the middle of the screen right now so people can see.
Right, exactly. And it's hella funny because I just started learning like Premiere and like, learning how to type and put text in or figuring out sound effects. Like, I didn't go to film school.
Yes.
I never learned anything. I just started picking up a camera because I started watching guys like Vlad Rimberg, like Eric Jacobus from the Stunt People, Zero Gravity, Tony Chu, Aaron Tony, Kerry Wong, Sam Locke, Latif, like all these guys that just did it on their own. And then Real Kick, Sam Hargrave,
Yes.
Thayer, Daniel
Harris.
Stevens.
Yep.
Alex Wynn, like all these guys that were just same thing. Even if they didn't want to do stunts, they just wanted to make stuff, right? They wanted to be like Jackie and Samo, Bruce, all these other people. So I was like, well, I think I can do that, right? After a little bit, I just convinced myself that I think that's a good idea.
No way.
In 2005, I picked up a camera and I shot a bunch of stuff that will never see the light of day.
Yes.
But I had a ton of fun. And then I was like, okay, I gotta like study.
Totally.
So I started reading a bunch of books. I would watch movies on tape. Back when, you used to have to seek and it would go like frame by frame, hella slow. Like
100%.
I used to do that all the time and just to study and teach myself. And then finally I was like, well, I'll give it a shot, right? I'll try it again. And just something clicked. I started making things and we would do like little BS skits. And I had other friends that just wanted to do comedy stuff, like absurd jackass kind of stuff. So I was like, cool.
Kind of like me and Vlad did.
Yeah, like
totally.
let's just do it, right? It's a different,
Totally.
It's not martial arts, but maybe I can have a fight scene in it. And we just started doing things like that. And then over time, it got better. It got more coherent. It got funnier. And then after a while, I think I just wanted to do just martial arts stuff. Because I'm like, well, I wanted to do, like Jackie Chan, like direct and write, act and produce and choreograph all this stuff. And then I realized doing all that is really damn hard.
Yeah.
all together. So somewhere in that realm, I just started like, because I would be in my old stuff at the end because I tried to make everybody else look good.
And then you're like,
and then at the end, I'm like, okay, let me get in there and mix it up. But then it's hard because you're in there performing, trying to make yourself look good, trying to know where the camera is, still trying to direct your friend.
Yes.
Still trying to direct how the story's going to go because only you're in charge of the story.
Totally.
So it was a big learning lesson. And the irony of that is doing all that and then going to eventually do stunt work. And it's kind of the same process in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
You get tasked with something, you have to go from the script, bring that to life, try all these different things, and then get everyone on board with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then show it off, and hopefully be like, hey, is this what you're looking for? So it's just kind of funny how that
all works full circle,
happened.
right? Yeah. And what kind of stuff were you watching back then for inspiration? Like in between that time when you took a break and then you came back and something clicked, what style and genre of stuff were you watching? Because I feel like that's really important as an influence on you.
Yeah, I think I was always loved Hong Kong cinema, right? And not just like, everybody says that and they say like, I love Jackie Chan films, I love Sammo Hung films. But I mean, I watched all the Chinese cinema. So there's like Stephen Chow and John Woo. I would watch stuff like Johnny To and Ringo Lam.
Yes.
Choi Hark, like all these big directors and producers, and then Jackie stuff, and then Sammo stuff. And
Did
then
you watch
Yuen
old
Biao's
stuff like Shaw Brothers? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Like all the La Garlong stuff.
Yes.
Even way back, like in the 60s, I was just a big nerd. And I grew up in a bad neighborhood, so it was either like do that stuff, be in gang life, or play video games and read and watch movies. Totally. So I chose the second option. And that's kind of what I did. And so luckily my family was always into watching movies. And I would grow up getting into that stuff because my grandfather, there was like a mom and pop shop. And it would be like, here, get a kid movie. And I'll get my movie.
Nice.
Right? But then over time, I'm like, well, what movies are you watching? And I started, it's like his rule was, if you're going to hang out and watch, like, don't get scared and don't tell your mom.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Totally. So I would watch stuff that I probably shouldn't have been watching early on, like Die Hard and
Same here,
Lethal Weapon and all that stuff. But
Same.
then I got into all the Asian cinema.
Yeah.
So yeah, during that time, besides Asian cinema, like I watched a lot of Martin Scorsese. That's a big inspiration of mine. And a lot of Korean cinema. It was blowing up at that time. So that was like, what, 2006 to like 2008. Was a big blow up for Korean cinema. Like Old Boy was a big thing.
Yep.
There was
The
a couple
original
other
guys, the original.
Yeah, the original, exactly. The original by Park Chan-wook. And then that same director, Bong Joon-ho, just won for Parasite.
Yes.
He was doing old movies, and he had one called Memories of Murder, which I really like. It's kind of like a crime drama. But anyway, I like that stuff because it's more real.
Yeah.
And it's less martial arts. And I'm like, that'd be cool to like figure out how to blend that stuff. Like I like the rhythm of Hong Kong. Sometimes I like it to feel real. So how do I blend that? But when we all start, we all pick our heroes, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing all that Jackie stuff,
Of course.
really kind of funny and silly, and a lot of like pop, 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 all that kind of thing. And that's what I did forever. And then when I got into stunts, they're like, "That's great. Can you do something else?"
Yeah.
And I was
The
like,
other styles.
Oh, what? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, what? Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's so funny, man. That's really crazy to think about. And then when you started shooting all this stuff, like we've had other guys on here like Vlad who I've talked to before. But when you started shooting, how did you know how to shoot? Were you just replicating stuff that you were seeing in other scenes? Like, were you already able to piece out coverage and cuts in your head? And like, what was the process like? Because I think that's one of the most daunting tasks for new stunt people out there.
Totally. It's, I think of like in photographs almost, like storyboards, I guess.
Yeah.
And then when I started watching movies and seeing how they put things together, like I remember, watching Police Story in slow motion. Like I'd put the whole mall fight in slow motion just to be like, well, how'd they do that cut or how'd they do that moment? And sometimes that stuff doesn't make sense to me initially, But then I realized like it can't always be literal photographs.
Yeah, it's not always linear either.
Yeah.
Time cuts and stuff happens.
So I used to frame like that, really like wide, static, like on a tripod. I wouldn't do too much handheld. And then eventually I started moving the camera because I'm like, oh, that's cool, right? Because I don't have a dolly, I don't have a crane or a jib or any of that. So I started being like, how do I do this stuff? And then watching all the indie guys do things over time. There was a place called the Stunt People Forum. It had a bunch of indie guys on there. There's other guys like Mag Fighters, Andy Long Nguyen, who's part of the Jackie Chan stunt team. Team Bay, like Vidon, these other guys, young masters Vidon. Like Lawrence and Felix, Fernando Huerto, like with Jabroni Pictures,
of course.
Joey Man, all these other guys that were doing stuff. And I started seeing these guys like approach it from a film way too.
Yeah.
So I'm learning like cinema and I'm learning these film things. So I started just kind of copying both and figuring out what my style was from that.
Damn.
And that helped me like to have references at all times. Like you have those old references like books. Then you have these guys going out there trying it. It works or doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh shit, that's cool. Like I would have never thought of that, And so it helped me give me the confidence to try my ideas.
Yeah.
And then from there, it kind of just started being like trial and error.
Yep.
Like I think this is going to work. And sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. Even if I thought it was cool, I'd put it out on the forum and guys would be like, yeah, it kind of sucks, And I'm like, oh crap,
like totally. Yeah, people weren't shy about giving honest feedback back in the days, but it was cool, man. And I think one of the pivotal moments, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think one of the pivotal moments is around like 2011 when you guys flew out Vlad actually to Chicago, and you guys shot a short called Yo Soy Un Hombre Loco.
That's right. Yes, I'm a crazy man.
Yes.
That was,
Hey, Connor, pull that one up too.
Oh shit.
And what's the backstory on this movie before we like take a look at it? At the time you guys were in Chicago, Vlad was still in LA shooting indie stuff.
Yep.
But you knew that you wanted to collab at some point. So
So I've known Vlad's like officially kind of talking to him since like 2007, maybe end of 2007, early 2008. And then I had an idea, like we talked because I went to San Francisco with Eric. I was doing this black and white feature called Those Who Go to Hell. I was trying to make a feature on like $5,000, which is ridiculous. Don't ever do that, ever, anybody. But, because I saw those guys do it. They made something called Contour for $5,000. And I was like, shit, if they can do it, like maybe we can do it. I don't know, But I learned obviously very fast, like it's a lot of time, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of prep, different locations. Like you can only do so much for free.
Yeah.
So anyway, over time, I eventually reached out to Vlad and, I met Eric Jacobus the year before and then he's like, cool, maybe one day we'll meet. So we just kept talking. And then it was actually Sean that had the idea to hit up Vlad and was like,
no way.
We always talk about going, right? Going to LA one day, but it's always expensive. And it's like, what if we flew you out? And one day Sean looked up flights. It was like 2010 and almost the end of 2010. And he's like, I found a flight for like $300.
Wow.
Round trip. Let's go in 150 each, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And so we talked to Vlad and we were like, well, we don't want you to just come out. Cause I know Vlad's had experiences with people where they're like, I love to shoot with you. I want to do things with you, all this stuff. And then they kind of like force him to work for them, but they're not really giving him anything that will, no compensation, no money or no time or no respect in that way. And so he's like, well, why do I want to work with you if you're just going to like bring me out to make you look good, make just me do all the work?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So we were like, let's have you come out, you direct us, and we'll listen to whatever you want.
Awesome.
Because you kind of know what you really want to do, and we want to experience that, And so he's like, great. and he had this idea. And, you know, he, of course, Vlad being very secretive, it's like, I got this idea. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so we flew him out. He wrote the idea on the plane. We get there the first night. It was like a Thursday night or something like that. Because we started shooting. We shot the short in 3 days.
Yes.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on Thursday night, we rehearsed some of the ideas of what would be the house fight, which I don't know if that was brought up. It's like the apartment fight with Sean fighting
totally.
the other guys.
Yeah, totally. I think we have parts of those ones too.
And so that was one of the other members, Alex Megale's house at the time, his apartment. We asked him for an apartment location. He's like, yeah, use my place, you know? And so when we're doing that, we only had one night to shoot it in because we had other stuff to shoot. We just kind of choreographed on the fly as we did.
Yep.
But, you know, Vlad's whole direction was like, Sean, you're this guy that's hearing music. You know, this in your head. And then he's like, Manny, you're this kind of guy. We're like, okay. But it was great because he had such these like big, crazy, grand ideas, but he knew exactly what he wanted to see.
Totally.
And we knew also how to get it done, and all the guys knew how to play along. So even though a lot of the structure was different, because he really wanted to go a different route than we're used to. Yeah. We were like, well, let's do it. Let's go all in. You know, you're here. So yeah, it was like we shot it in 3 days. There's a really funny story. I don't know if there's time to tell it, but there's a funny story with Vlad and I going to Steak and Shake late at night and getting lost. It was snowing in Chicago. Vlad, being from California, came, you know, in with like a track jacket.
Yes, of course.
But anyway, we're really hungry. We're talking late at night. And then I was like, yeah, there's a Steak and Shake like a mile away. We kind of have a similar story. I was like, oh, don't worry. It's only like 15 minutes away. Mind you, it's like whatever, 3 miles away. Yeah. It takes like 30 minutes to walk, 40 minutes to walk.
You tried to walk there.
So we walked there. And it was snowing and cold. Poor Vlad only had a tracksuit and he put like a T-shirt over his face to cover himself. I have like a winter jacket.
Oh my God.
But anyway, we get there and, you know, we get in there and then we order food and we leave and we see a coyote and he's like, oh, there's a dog. And I was like, no, it's a coyote. He's like, what? Those are only in LA. And we had to go back to back like this. Because he's like, oh, if the dog attacks you, just high block it. And then when it bites you, you grab it and you just break its back over your neck. You grab it in the nuts anyway.
No way.
But this was like the camaraderie that we had.
Yeah,
like,
man.
First time I met him, we were doing stuff like this. Yeah. And so when we went and shot the finale between Sean and I at the end, we came in and we kind of realized like he knew what he wanted, but he was developing his different style. He was doing all this bigger Korean stuff, like this real big, everything was like
totally huge beats. Yeah,
totally. And it was way different than we did. And for the first 4 hours, we were trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And then we figured it out and then we realized, oh, it doesn't look good. So we got to scrap it. We only have, 4 hours left. We redid the whole half, I think all the way till I got, knocked out in the fight. That was the day one. Then the second day I had to fight him in the bathroom and then we had to finish the rest.
Damn.
And we did it. And then after it was done, that was like November of 2010. It took us 6 months to edit because I was editing it, but we'd call each other on the phone and I only had like enough strong of a PC at the time. I was editing on PCs. Mm-hmm. And I would have to export it. Now everyone does like Dropbox. They send it to your phones. It's all this stuff, right? Back then, I had to like edit the whole short, like an assembly, export it, put it up on Vimeo or YouTube, private, send it to Vlad. Vlad would be like, okay, at this point, make this change, that point, make that change, like a list. And I'm like, okay, and I make the changes and then redo the process for months.
Totally.
And I would sometimes call on the phone. He's like, no, like this, let me play it. Okay. No, there's no way like now where we can just look on our phones live, right? Like FaceTime. And then be like, oh, no, do that way. It wasn't until finally I wanted to go to LA the next year.
Yes.
And it was like July, I think, or something like that. I got time off of work and I was like, let me just go there. Let's finish it. And then I'll hang with you and maybe I'll shoot some stuff. He's like, great. So we get there and then in like the first night or second night in 15 minutes, we finished the whole show.
Because you got to be in the same place.
Exactly. It was easy. And then I understood what he said. He's like, no, it's like this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then we were just laughing about it because we're like, why don't we just do this earlier?
Totally.
But at the time, I was working retail. I was like I'd gotten AFTRA in 2008, I think, and it wasn't even SAG yet.
I think Cube's still working at the grocery store.
Yeah. I was at Starbucks at the grocery store, and I was at a Best Buy. I had like 2 jobs, and Vlad was still at Apple.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like trying
Ralph's.
to get and I was trying to get my vouchers into SAG because I didn't have enough money to buy in yet. So I'm like, okay, let me get in legit. I was doing background work and then trying to day play on after jobs, and it was all new to me. So when I went out to LA, I was like, well, maybe I'll hustle and see what else is out there, you know. And at the time, like, whatchamacallit, Chris Collin, getting big,
1,000 pounds.
You were doing stuff and everything. So yeah, man, it was crazy how all of that connects. Like, and then we meet again right before I decide to move, and like all of those things connect. 'Cause I remember going to White Lotus,
way back,
way back, and then we were doing stuff there. And then when you guys did Jam, it's just like it's so funny. Everything's just connected in some way.
It's crazy to see the evolution, man. Yeah, it's so wild. There's so many pivotal points where I think about it, and it's like super wild to see everyone's journey up to this point. And even like me, like having known Vlad since high school, and then seeing how you guys connected and stuff. And now like when we've gotten together and done projects like Ballerina, where all 3 of us were together, it was like super crazy for me. I'm like, this is so insane to look back on, you know?
It is, man.
It's crazy, man. And what's wild to me is that like from that video that you shot and all the other videos that you've done over the course of the years, you have an incredible backlog of videos on your YouTube channel that people can go through and watch. And what's wild to me is to see like the progression of your improvements of your own personal style, which has obviously had a huge impact on your jobs and your career right now. I think one of my favorite fights that you did way back in the day that got a little bit of notice, I think, and people still remember, is like the jacket fight.
Yeah. And everyone switches.
Yeah, and you've done like what, 2 to 3 versions of the jacket fight?
3 versions now. The last one was with Kyle Potter and Jaquan and Brian Sawyer.
Totally, yeah. And the jacket fight was really cool because it was just like one of the first times where, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like it was like a fun fight that I saw. Yeah. Because a lot of the other fights were just so like very much the same. Just beat people up, bop, 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 bop. Yeah. And the jacket fight like was a mix of characters and stuff. Connor, you have that one? I think it's like a really good example of some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Boom. Wow. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, it's funny is we shot that while we were working on Divergent with JJ Perry and Garrett Warren. We were in between almost the end of the show. And a lot of almost all the LBP members, if not all of them, were all hired, which was great. And thanks to JJ and Garrett for allowing that to happen. But, we were doing such a serious movie. And I was like, let's go back to our roots. Because we used to do this stuff all the time. We'd go to garages or alleys or all these other places and just like, let's just make up something funny and, fight, blah, 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 and something simple. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just do that. And we did this in one day. We're choreographing on the spot, just having fun. I think we spent like 6 hours on this, but I was just like, let's come in and everyone changes every so often. Yes. And they're like, well, how do we change? I'm like, it just happens. It's like tag, I didn't think much of it. And it was fun to do. We all had a blast. We're all laughing and I put it out. And then later we did a second one, right? Like I think in 2015 or something like that. Well, with all the guys, and it was the same idea. Yeah. I was like, let's just up the stakes a little bit. Let's get a little crazy. Let's add like weapons or whatever. Yes. And that's it. Like, yeah, this one with Kyle, it was just like tricking people, like, okay, they're fighting as they do. Yeah. Right. And I know like I have a pattern in a way, and that's just everyone does. Right. Totally. But I'm like, I like to go against the grain a little bit, even with stuff I do. It's like, get everyone going and excited. And then all of a sudden, as it starts to layer itself, it changes on you. Yeah. And you're like, oh, you're thrown off for a second. It switches. And then it goes back. You start hearing the same thing. And then from there, it goes more, it keeps layering and layering and layering. Because I would like to assume that the audience is smart enough to pick up on what's going on. But I also have to be respectful enough that they want to have fun on the same journey. It's like when you go to an amusement park, you want to ride the roller coaster to get excited. Or if you don't like roller coasters, there's something there that excites you. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to go to the amusement park and just be like, I'm not going to do anything. Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I like to do these fun things because I get it. I like the serious stuff, and I get at work, we kind of have to do that. Of course. But it's nice to just be with the boys and make stuff like this and just have fun. And it always looks like we're beating the crap out of each other, but I guess in a weird way, it's like play fighting, like we know how to, and no one really actually gets hit or hurt sometimes.
Yeah.
And if we do, we know it's within reason.
Yeah, totally.
You know, we all understand what's happening, so it's fun.
I think one thing people don't realize is that a lot of the times when you see the stuff that we put out online or things that we put out from other projects, even though it's our own choreography, a lot of the times we're dictated what we have to do because of the storyline. And so like one of the few ways that you can really like think outside the box and do what you want to do is to shoot all this stuff like on your own time with your friends for fun. And that's really where you get to like be creative, think outside the box, and more than anything, like, you know, just continue to improve.
Totally.
One of the funny things is like you just put out a fight recently that has Brian Slower and Jay Kwan in it. And I was telling Connor before you got here, I was like, you know what's really funny? Manny just put out another practice fight with two guys that really don't need to practice fight anymore. But the fact that they're doing it shows why they're so badass. And I'm like, really? All these new kids need to be doing what those guys are doing. I'm like, Manny doesn't need to be shooting a practice fight for fun. Brian and Jay don't need to be practice fighting for fun. But that's why you guys are at the level that you're at right now.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's like, I remember I had some coordinators. This is what's funny. I'll tell a little history. Like when I first came in and I was shooting my own stuff, right? When this is the big connotation now, right? You're a fight guy.
Yeah.
Right? You do fights only. And I'm like, okay, sure. But when I understood why, because like even Chad Sahelski told me, he's like, well, you know, do what you know how to do and then learn everything else. Because there might be a time where you have to fight in a car. You have to fight by water. You have to fight near fire or any of that stuff. And then if you want to coordinate, you got to know of those things 100%. And be aware of them. So you're not going there being like, oh, we'll talk to the fire guy. It's like, well, that's not how it works. You're in charge of that. You're in charge of the safety. So when I started hearing things like that from being around real stunt guys, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. When I start growing into other fights, I have to make sure that I know what I'm getting myself into. So do the guys. And then all the fighting stuff has to make sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I started practicing just fights in different ways, you know, with weapons and without weapons and different locations and different costumes, different elements. And when I met Chad, he's like, yeah, that's great because most people don't do that. And then I got to a point where, I started working and doing PREVIS, learning how the PREVIS process works, learning how, you know, like you said, we're dictated by what production wants.
Yeah.
And not getting too married to it. Because I think what happens with a lot of these indie guys, and me, when I first started, it was the same. Like, you want to do your best and you have like a way of doing it. Yeah. And then when someone tells you, don't do it that way, you're like,
your whole world is shifting.
Yeah, you're like, what do I do? But it makes sense because if you want to be a director, you know, what if the writer has something to say? What if the producer has something to say? Totally. What if the actor has something to say? You can't just tell them, well, it's my movie. It doesn't really work that way. Yeah. You have to collaborate with these people to get the movie you want to get. And sometimes you have to let go of certain things to do that. And sometimes it's a great product. Sometimes it's not, but you win some, you lose some, right? Like, and I think after a certain point doing previs, they're like, yeah, you don't have to practice anymore, right? You have the idea.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but do I? You know what I'm saying? Like, do I really have the knowledge to know exactly what I want? Like, sure, I may know. I'm not going to come into work and not know what I'm going to do, but I would really want to know, because how many times at work, as you've known, you have a great idea and they're like, yeah, do it on the other side. Oh, by the way, we're going to add a wire. Yeah. Oh, by the way, the actor's only cool with this. Oh, by the way, the producer doesn't want to see any kicks. Oh, by the way, the writer's really thinking that there should be martial arts. You're getting all these conflicting different things and you're like, how do I make all that work?
Yeah.
Exactly like what you said. Go out and shoot and give yourself those limitations. So when I go out and shoot something, that's why I purposely don't use any equipment. That's why I purposely try to keep it simple. Yeah. Try to do it in a day to a few days. If I do something that's a week, maybe I'm trying to tell a story. Because how many times in previs, they don't want to see action anymore. They want to see a scene, a whole story.
Totally.
With the action that complements that story, which it should be. You want to get people excited, but if you don't go and put in the time to try to learn how to do those things from the ground up and constantly check where you're at, it's like, well, if you're only a one-trick pony, I mean, you know how it is in this business. You only last for so long doing the same move over and over, 100%. Doing the same thing over and over. It's like if, you know, Chad even told me to, right? Or it's like what Jackie Chan said. If you're going to do the same style over and over, you got to learn how to expand and contract and variate that same style. Right? Like Jackie did the same. He did all fights, handheld and, you know, just martial arts. And then he started adding costumes, periods, glass, cars, water, boats, everything you can think of. And then now he's everything and anything. He's done it all.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can keep the same style, but you gotta do this with it eventually.
Yeah,
you can't just stay stuck.
You have to grow.
Yeah.
And there's some people that choose to and some that don't. Yeah.
Yep.
That's super crazy. Of all the indie fights that you got to do before we talk about like your professional career and all the stuff you're working on, which is an insane list. Is there an indie fight of yours that's your favorite or one that stands out the most as like the most rewarding or fun one you've done over the years?
I don't know, man. I mean, if it's like corny to say, but they're all kind of rewarding in a way because they all teach you something about everybody, yourself and everyone involved, good or bad, right?
Yeah.
But I would say like indie stuff, being on Dennis Rule's Unlucky Stars all the time.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, it kind of made me feel what the guys were doing probably with Contour, right? With Eric and Dennis and Vlad and all those guys in the Bay Area. Like, and we had everybody, that was kind of like a little bit of everyone, right? Like you had Sam Hargrave in there and then Vlad and myself and Sean Burnell and Ken Kittigwa and Dennis Rule. And then we had Tony Chu. We had all their boys from the Bay Area. And then we started bringing the newer kids too, little by little. Yeah, Cartago and Guy and Alvin. All these guys. We even had Marshall Club in there.
Yep.
And it's like, that was so cool to me because it's all these indie guys coming up and just doing what we know how to do. And just trying to get it done and trying to understand that like at the end of the day, it's what Dennis and Vlad want. Even if we have our opinions and we'll voice them here and there. If they're like, nah, man, I really want it to be like this. Like, okay, cool. Let's do that.
Yeah.
When we did that big finale fight, I remember we went to White Lotus. We kind of referenced the idea just so we have something and not just going in there cold. And then we did Dennis and mine's fight in like no rehearsal in like 4 to 5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And then we did an acting scene with Hargrave the next day. Oh yeah. But in between that, we did Ken Kittigwa's fight against Roy Chen and then Ken Kittigwa against Sean Burnell. So in like 2 days, we did like 3 fights and a big ass action scene and then the end. And the day before or a week before, something like that, Vlad did his fight with Hargrave completely. And you can't just do that with anybody.
Yeah,
like you got to come in, everybody's got to know what's going on. So I think being around that energy and seeing that, it just made me be like, I'm really glad I took this path. You know what I mean? Like it was cool. It was working with everybody and everybody was cool.
That's super cool. Hell yeah, man. Yeah. And now like from this transition of shooting all these previs and all these practice fights, you've now transitioned into the industry doing what myself and a lot of our homies do, which is we're now fight coordinators and choreographers. And that generally entails us like getting scripts, breaking them down, choreographing the scene, shooting the previs, training the actors and actresses. And over the last couple of years, you've had the chance to work on some pretty major projects.
Yeah.
I'd say of all the ones that there's a bunch that stand out. Like you on Ironfist, you were a fight coordinator, right? Choreographer.
One of the fight coordinators and choreographers.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then on Teen Titans, you got to be assistant fight choreographer and coordinator.
Yes. Under Brendan Hur was the fight coordinator, and then Larnell, our stunt coordinator.
Heck yeah. And then what's some of the projects that stand out in your mind as some of the favorite ones that you've got to do? Because there's a list of them I can name from like the Telltale series with Batman to Dark Tower.
Yeah, that was. It's funny because it's always perspective, right? Like sometimes you're just in a grind and it's not that it's always rough. It's just like, you know how it is. You get in a grind, you get into work mode and you kind of forget like you're doing something cool.
Yeah.
I mean, even my first big movie working with JJ and Garrett, Divergent, was a big deal because that's the first time I was ever on a run. That was the first time I was like doing everything from assisting JJ on previs to like breaking down budgets to then doing stunts, like jumping on trains, jumping off of trains, climbing things, like all these things at once. And then over time, just coming in and doing all the previous stuff and starting to see where that evolved even more. Like I remember it started being more of a bigger deal. I think when we did, trying to think what the project was, probably X-Men with Steve Brown. When I did X-Men Apocalypse, that Weapon X scene, Steve asked me to come out and help him. And, we did this thing for Garrett and Garrett was super specific. So we had to come back and redo it with a couple other guys. And then that's the scene that's in the movie, right? They went out to, I think, Vancouver, Toronto to do that. And then from there, that helped Garrett get the job on Logan.
Yes.
And Logan was a big learning experience all around because I'd worked for Garrett a few times and obviously he has a very distinct style, but learning and being around his style and embracing it more and just kind of seeing where he comes from. Like I learned so much just embracing it.
Okay.
Cause like I said, when you're an indie guy and you have your way, it's hard to break out of the mold. But as you grow, I was just like, you know what? let's just see where it takes me. Like, I would normally never do some of these things, but there's so much I'm sure that I don't know, and there was. And so, like, being on Logan and then that leading me to stuff like Skyscraper and Gemini Man, like, all these things started being much more about the story that revolves around the action. And it's funny, right? Because when we all start off, we start doing story, and the action's not great. And then we start focusing on action, and that gets better. And then it comes back full circle.
Totally.
We have to now bring that again. It's about the story into the action. So yeah, like being on projects like that, teaching me all this stuff, and then doing vises, like designing the action for it. You know, it's like I've worked for an Ang Lee film twice.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who did Crouching Tiger and all these other movies. You know, I just worked on a Barry Levinson film, the guy who did Rain Man. Mm-hmm. There was a boxing movie we did for Ben Foster called Harry Haft. And it's like doing boxing in the 40s. Wow. Like compared to boxing totally in Creed or Rocky, where everything's super technical or super like, oh, I'm getting, you know, whatever. I'm getting hit big.
Yeah.
And it's real bombastic. It's like, well, if you look at the old 40s movies of fights, they just come in heads down and they swing. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that safely? Yeah. And then and this is a real story. So it's just not documented in the same way, right? There's like newspaper clippings and everything. The guy actually lived. Just really background on the story there. He's an Auschwitz survivor who had to kill other prisoners to survive. And then he escaped Auschwitz, went to America, couldn't get any other jobs. He's not very smart, obviously, because he got kidnapped by Nazis at 16.
Okay.
And then he started boxing. But you know, he fought like how he did in the prison camps.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to kind of kill people, but I can't kill them. And then he fought against up and coming Rocky Marciano, and he lost, obviously, because the guy was a better boxer. And then at the end of all that, he was just trying to find his teenage sweetheart from Poland, where he's from. Eventually finds her, but she's terminal with cancer.
Okay.
And he has his own family. So he's lived this crazy life. And it's like, how do you show that guy's life in the fights?
Yeah.
He's trying to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a real person trying to win. He just couldn't win. So how do we do that? And so, like, getting to do that, I got to camera operate on First Unit.
Nice.
Which was awesome. Thanks to the DP George Steele and to Clay Barber for pushing for that, who's the coordinator on that film. Yeah. It's the same thing, like being able to take what I know, work with these guys, and then, you know, work with a guy that's a legend like Barry Levinson, who's just like, yeah, try this and do this. That's when you're like, man, I remember doing this stuff in my alley.
Yeah, right.
In my backyard. You
for
know,
free.
Yeah, right, for free and for fun. And then now they're like, here you go, here's a red, don't mess it up.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah, that's wild.
So yeah, man.
And so I got a question, and I don't know how much we're gonna be able to talk about it right now. So I'm just gonna throw it out there. How many seasons of Iron Fist did you work on?
Just the second one.
The second one. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was curious what your take was on that. Did you feel any pressure going into the second season after, for lack of a better term, I guess, the reputation that the first season had?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, the media and our community are going to talk the way they do and whatever. Everyone's going to have a perception of what you do. Of
course.
You know? And sometimes some people get it. It's like, hey, that's the hand you were thrown. It sucked. You know, we all get that. Sometimes it turns into that. Sometimes you can overcome it.
Sometimes it's the edit that kills you.
Exactly.
You know?
There's totally things out of your control.
Yeah.
You can do everything possible. You know, give notes, give direction, be communicative, and it'll still just go to shit. Yeah. So I think with that, we were lucky to have someone like Clay Barber just to be like, listen, if this is your guys' schedule, if this is what your guys' MO is, this is what we need in return. And I'm not saying that that Brett Chan, the previous coordinator, didn't do that, but I think also what helped is because I'm pretty sure the studio realized they kind of boned themselves by not working with someone like Brett.
Yeah.
Because obviously you see something like Warrior.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then it's like, so if that guy can do something like that, what happened on Iron Fist? You can't just put the blame on someone.
Of course not.
You know, it's a collaboration effort. So I think Clay was just very clear to say, we want to collaborate. We get that you're under the gun, like we'll be, but it's give and take. You know, like if you want a certain standard, we'll help you get there, but we need to set it first.
Yeah.
And then from there, you guys, you know, ebb and flow as you want, but we need to be able to set the standard. So we were lucky to have that. That's what helped. We had our first director was David Dopkin, who did like Wedding Crashers. Yeah. He did Shanghai Nights. So he knows how to do action and comedy. and he's a big producer on Into the Badlands.
Okay, yeah.
So
totally.
what's dope is he was really like, yeah, exactly what Clay's saying. Like, we need to let these guys set the standard and help the actors and have rehearsals, have time, because it's TV. You know how it is, being on some town and doing tons of TV. They give you a day, a few hours, or none.
Or nothing.
And they want you to do a 3-minute fight in a day.
Yeah. What normally would take a week on a feature film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have 8 hours of dialogue. They're like, all right, so we got 2 hours left. You good? You know?
You have no idea.
And man.
Man.
So I think that's what helped us, and everyone got on board, and we were just really lucky to have the team we had.
Okay.
We had 3 fight coordinators, Aaron Armstrong, myself, Malai Kim. And we had great stunt doubles, David Armstrong, Alec Craddock, Hannah Scott. And we had obviously Malai as well, being the Davos double. And we were lucky to bring in great people from New York and other people flying out to be parts. We had like Lauren Kim fly out. We had a couple other people come in. And that's also what was cool. Clay's like, you're going to get the best out of them. You're not just getting a stunt person doing a fight. You're getting a person that can act, perform, work with your leads and make them look good.
Yeah.
And not just someone that's like, you know, like, what do I do? Deer in headlights. So I think that's what helped us, is that the studio realized it kind of messed up, and we were like, we're still here to work with you, but it's got to be set like this.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, we're not going to do good, because if we get hung up on that, then we can't put our flavor on it. Mm-hmm. It was more like, let's just do what we know how to do and just be clear. This is why we're trying to do it, you know? And then if you don't want that, you'll see why.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll see why. And I think that happened a couple of times too. Sometimes in the show, like they would cut the schedule or they would cut the budget, and they're like, oh, that didn't look as good. It's like,
that's what happens.
yeah, man, we're not superhuman.
Yeah.
You know, we can only do so much.
That's wild, man. Yeah. That's super crazy. And I don't know how much you can talk about it right now, but you're currently in town visiting because you're working on a couple of projects.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
A couple of different things.
A couple of different
kind of day
things.
playing. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of different things. One of them was you were most recently working on the new series, The Mandalorian.
Yes.
Okay. And then are you able to say the other one that you're working on right now?
I was on Penny Dreadful.
Penny Dreadful.
With Mark Norby and Vlad Rimberg and Brian Duffy. And then I was just helping, just being a body for Vlad on Lucifer.
Nice.
You know, just helping with some viz. So thank you to all those guys.
Hell yeah. Shout out, dude. I may actually jump in the mix and perform for Vlad too coming out.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Nice. Perfect.
I got the call.
Perfect.
And I was like, oh, define perform.
Yeah. Right?
He's like, do a couple flips. He's like, are you down to drop kick somebody? I'm like, to the floor?
Right.
I was like, is there a pad? Is it the floor?
Right, exactly. I know.
So funny, bro.
Yeah, he was just like not yelling at me, but you know how Vlad is. It's just funny to see him grow into his own.
Totally.
And I love it because we've been really good friends since we worked. And yeah, so he's like, everyone be safe. You know, it's just a viz. You don't got to go hard. But we're just stuck in that indie mindset. So I would just do things with like elbows and knee pads, like to the deck. And he's like, do you want a pad? What are you doing?
Just chill.
You know, and I'm like, that's cool. I kind of know where I'm at. But then, yeah, sometimes you get banged up. You're like, maybe I will use that pad, you know?
100%. Yeah.
But, yeah, man, it was good. It was nice to just day play and just have fun. I haven't done that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was great. I got to see a lot of old friends and meet new people, which was really cool. And it's so crazy how the community has grown.
Yeah,
here.
it's crazy.
Because I've been kind of out of the loop, just being on other runs or helping other coordinators and just jumping all over the place. And now being in LA, seeing so much young talent.
Yeah, it's insane.
And it's like reminds me of when we started, but also like, whoa, is that how we were? You know, like were we just as wide-eyed and naive and like, I want to do everything, you know?
I think of that too. Yeah, it's cool sometimes to jump in the saddle and put on the costume and still show that you can fall and stand up again.
Exactly.
And it's also cool to actually get off when you rap.
Right? Yeah. I know, because it's like, as you know, being in this position, I think that's what people don't realize a lot. And I don't have anything against them for not realizing it because they're not in the same position. But
I'm just saying it because I'm jaded. But.
Well, yeah. But you know how it is. It's like when you're fight coordinating, and it's funny how that came up, right? Because like when I was coming up, and you were too, it was just PREVIS, right? Your utility contract.
Yeah.
Just paying your dues, you're giving your time, you're giving your 2 cents. Then maybe you'll get to a choreographer. Yeah. You'll have a little more say in the choreography, but you're still just visiting and choreographing.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Even if you're doing most of the legwork, whatever, right? You're being a team player. And then as you get to fight coordinator, well, now you have the title, but now all the responsibility is on you.
Yeah.
So if that actor doesn't know what's happening, if that director hasn't gotten to beat sheet, if that producer doesn't understand the damn point of the fight, if that coordinator can't explain it because you've made it too complicated for him or her, that's on you.
Yeah, 100%.
And then on top of that, you still got to perform, you still got to double, or you still got to come in and train an actor and still do more visits.
Yeah.
And still go on set and coordinate. So it's a lot of work. And it's a baby version of stunt coordinating in a way without doing all the heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's tons of times. I mean, on Divergent, I remember that first month of prep, I think I slept like a week.
Yeah.
It's like 4 weeks. I'd never really experienced that. I was just lucky that, you know, my crazy self, whenever I shot my own stuff, I'd edit the same night and put it out the next day because I just wanted to see it. I was impatient. And then I didn't realize when I got there, you know, Jay just like, cool, so it's going to be done tomorrow, right? And I was like, oh, the whole thing? And he's like,
yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know? And then you show it and they're like, oh yeah, that's great, but they give you revisions. They're like, okay, cool. So you're going to do the revisions and you're going to do 2 other fights.
Yeah.
And you're going to do this.
Yeah. And for those that don't realize what we're talking about, the difficulty we're talking about is the amount of time it takes to edit. Because like what people don't realize is like we're on set, we shoot these previs, it takes us the full 8-hour day. When we wrap, everyone goes home and then we start editing. Yep. And I mean, we've been doing this for years, and even still, there's some times where I had to do a fight last week or on the season finale. So obviously, it's going to be one of the biggest fights this season. And we finish, and I was like, "All right, guys, I got to bounce. I got to get out of here." Everyone's like, "You good?" And I'm like, "This is like an 8-hour edit minimum." They're like, "What? 8 hours?" I'm like, "It's pretty standard, guys." I'm like, luckily, I have like no VFX on this one.
Right.
This is just literally a 2.5 minute fight that I have to do, plus sound design. Plus, obviously, make sure everything looks good. A little color correction here and there. Yeah. If I had to overlay VFX too, could have been 12-hour design, you know? And that's the glorious side people don't see.
Exactly. And I think that's also because I've been lucky to be around coordinators that actually design. Like they actually second unit, meaning they're not just doing the action. And it's nothing against the coordinators that just want to focus only on the action. Totally. It's just these coordinators have found a way for themselves to get second unit. And then, I mean, look at Chad and Dave doing first unit directing, doing John Wick, An Atomic Blonde, Hobbs and Shaw. And because of guys like that, I was able to understand like, oh, what I'm doing indie-wise makes sense to apply to previs. Like, I want to show the story. Yeah. I want to clarify things. Why are the people fighting? What's going on? Because it's true. You go into the meetings, and if you just show the action, they're like, why is that? What's going on there? Well, why? Oh. They get confused because they don't know what the hell they're seeing. Yeah. They just see bodies and movement and yelling and sound effects, and until you show the reasoning, even as silly as that sounds, it's like 100%. If you just break it down for them, they get excited with you. Oh yeah. They're actually like, oh shit, that's going to be cool. Hell yeah. And look, if it comes out the way it does or doesn't is irrelevant. It's just like you got them excited, so that already helps you to get what you want in the end. But like you said, that 8 hours is that. You're in front of the computer trying to figure it out. It's not just going and then effects. Yeah. Because it's the truth. It's like if you didn't care, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you can edit in like 2 hours. Yeah, exactly. Easy, 2 to 4.
Yeah,
like,
no problem. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. But you care about what they're trying to sell, and you're helping them try to sell it. You know, nobody cares about an iPhone until they break down what's in the damn iPhone. Yeah. They just show you the iPhone, you're like, I already got a phone. Why should I care? But then what does Apple do all the time? Bam, the iPhone and this and this, and you're like, that's sold. I got to get it done. So it's the same thing. Yeah, you got to put in the time.
And so for kids out there that are interested in like getting into previs and into fight designing and choreography, what's the best way for them to make that jump and that leap? Because we've talked about it before on here. It's probably one of the most intimidating things for people to start at, especially when you're a beginner and have never done it before. So what advice do you personally have? Because we've shared some other insights here.
I generally tell people that when they ask me that kind of stuff, just go and make something. Don't even think about it. Just make something. Because that's always the first hardest step, right? Just believing you can shoot anything. Most people don't even shoot because they're already going, oh man, but I don't want to waste somebody's time and I don't want to just get in their head. And it's like, well, just be clear about what you want to do. I want to go to the park for 4 hours. Let's just try to make something. If it took you 4 hours and you got 10 seconds, that's what you got. Yeah. But it's better than just doing nothing and waiting and saying, well, I can't wait till I get this gear and that person and whatever, right? That's never how it's going to work. Just go out and make something. Then once you get a groove going and make stuff, just start to see now what sticks and what doesn't, right? Like if someone goes, oh yeah, I really like how you shoot this way, but you always do the same choreography, then mix it up.
Yeah,
give yourself limitations. Like make person A just only use their hands, make person B only kick, or switch it up, or vice versa. Like whatever point in the fight, the person's got to grab. Like just think of simple stuff like that and keep growing and learning and growing and learning. It's like, that's how I started and came up. That's how Vlad did. That's how you did. Like everyone starts really, really tiny and then starts doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Bigger and bigger. And I think what's happening now is when we started it, what these kids don't know is, we're capturing on tapes. Not only do we shoot, we're capturing the damn footage then having to log it.
Yeah.
And if we capture, God forbid, wrong, we got to do it all over again.
Oh yeah.
And then we have to export it right. If we export it wrong, we got to do it all over again. Dude. And the computers were way slower.
I was going to say, not to mention half the time, Vegas video would freeze on me. I'm like, I'm going to kill somebody.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, that's the last thing you need, right? While doing effects and all that stuff. So anyway, like these kids now, they take any of these iPhones, which shoot amazingly.
Totally.
You got the editing right on the damn phone.
Exactly.
You don't even have to do Premiere if you didn't want to. Yep. You can even add sound or take it to your computer, use iMovie, add basic sound. It's like, you have so much options. You can go on YouTube, look up any tutorial you want.
Totally.
Study it, literally do it side by side. When I was first doing it, I'm looking at books, or I'm looking at a movie, like editing, being like, I think, like that's what my reference was, like anybody else. So it's way easier to put out content. And it's like, look how much stuff is there. These kids are making stuff that I wouldn't even dream of making 10, 12 years ago.
Totally.
Like the way they're doing it now with like effects, the color correction, camera work. Like at the time I was barely thinking that when I first started. Like I was just trying to make sound work with the hits.
Yeah, and frame things in.
Exactly.
Right? Make sure things are in frame.
And then over time being like, oh, I can change the colors, like, oh, I can add effects.
Yeah.
Well, now it's just so common.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier. And if people are so quick to judge your work, it's like, well, everyone's got an opinion, right? Everyone's going to talk the way they talk. But I think if you're consistent in what you want to do and show it, it's going to come out, right? I've heard a quote that says you can only keep talent down for so long.
Yeah, totally.
Real pure talent. Because at some point it's going to break off. And if you've supported it, I'm sure they're going to reciprocate it. And if you haven't supported it, well, that person or people or whoever are going to remember that you haven't supported it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, that's on you. Because instead of trying to help these people and give them advice, you don't got to give them everything. Just give them a few advice here and there. Help them out. You were that person one day, at some point. Like even the way I'm at, I don't know everything about stunt coordinating or whatever, but it's like I would hope to call people like you, or JJ or Garrett or anybody, Clay and all these other coordinators, even like Justin Yu who's doing a bunch of car stuff, like all these people that are doing things that I may be so stuck in this fight element, but I may know certain things around it, but you guys may know more than me in other elements. So why wouldn't I reach out to you guys and be like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And what am I walking into? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And same thing, like hopefully I wouldn't go on to the jobs and be like, well, I wouldn't do the car stuff like that. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about that. So why am I even saying that?
Yeah.
So I think people just need to understand that when you're growing, like grow. And then as you start coming up and collaborating, like time and place, just know where you're at. I think we all get a little excited here and there for sure. I have definitely. And once people kind of check you, just be like, well, they're checking you for a reason. Like they're not always trying to keep you down. And you'll know the ones that are trying to keep you down. And instead of fighting fire with fire, just do your thing, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's all good. You're going to work with the good people. And before you know it, you'll come up. And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on it by like with the access that people have these days. I mean, you can literally pick up your phone and shoot 4K and change frame rates from 24 to 60 to 120, 240. It's insane. But what kind of equipment do you think people should start out with for those that are like getting into filming? Should they start on their iPhones or should they start with DSLR? And then the second part of that question is, what does your current kit consist of? Because I know people want to know that too.
Well, I guess I'll start with my current kit. So I have a Sony A7S II. I have a Sony lens 16-35, and then I have a Canon L lens 24 to 105, and that's all I use.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I feel like that's a good range of stuff to get and do. But I think, yeah, like that's it. Like I always tell people, use what you have. So like, I remember when Brian Slur started, he had a Rebel T2i and the kit lens. And I was like, yeah, man, just use that. But he's like, should I do this? It's like, no, because you don't, like, you may have the idea of what you want to try to use, but you don't really know how to do it yet. Like, so just start small. And then once that grows and grows and grows, you'll remember that idea you had.
Yeah.
And you'll get there and come up. Cause I was like that too. Like I remember seeing vlog shoot stuff way back in the day. And I was like, man, how is he getting all these angles and these edits and all this stuff? Then I realized he had a completely different camera than mine.
Totally.
I'm trying to copy him with literally not the same camera.
Not the same camera, yeah.
Like Handycam, zoom, like fixed lens,
Yeah.
And that's all it is like, if you have an iPhone, shoot an iPhone. They're so great now, like the quality is great. And then when you can buy a camera, like any camera you buy now is going to have amazing quality. It's like when people say, well, you got to get a Red, you got to get a Sony, you got to get this. It's like cars, right? Like you shouldn't go get a Ferrari because what if you know how to drive the damn thing?
Yeah.
If you can't drive your Civic, what makes you think you're going to drive a Ferrari?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the same idea. Learn how to be good with what you got. So when you get the big boy toys or the big girl toys, you know exactly what you want to do with them. And then it's no sweat. So when you get those curveballs at work or in your personal projects, you'll know how to roll with those punches instead of being like, oh, I don't have my gear. Because it's like, well, how many films or TV shows have we been on where they don't have their gear? And everyone's like, how do we finish this?
Totally.
And who they normally look to, the people that have done it without that stuff.
Yeah,
get it. So yeah, I would just say shoot with what you got.
Okay.
And make it count.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And then for someone like yourself that's in a position like myself, one of the things that I really start to be conscious of, obviously because we're the ones behind the camera, is performance.
Yes.
And I think you really become conscious of it when you are watching hours of playback and shooting hours of takes.
Yes.
And even if it's not you performing, I feel like I inherently learned so much by getting behind the camera because I would pick out everyone's bad habits on playback. Like, nope. Redo it, dude. Like this was a miss. Redo this. Your hands off. Redo this. Like so and so. And so from that perspective, from the outside, what are some crucial elements that you think the general stunt population and all the new gen really needs to work on? Or what are some skills that they should really start off with as a fundamental or foundational basis? You know what I'm saying? I feel like a lot of people get caught up in, I need to do parkour. I need to learn all these tricks. And I'm like, no, not at all.
Yep.
Learn your 4 basic punches and strikes and your 4 basic kicks. So for your perspective, what do you think people need as a foundational basis, and what would you suggest for them to start with? Yeah,
I think exactly what you were touching on is like have a base even in striking or in stances and footwork. Like Vlad is always big on stances and footwork. I agree the same way.
Yeah.
Have a base in something, and then like when you work for coordinators that want you to perform, what I learned from working with actors, and I came from a theater background in school.
Yeah,
like
same.
Just to kind of get the to be understanding of what that stuff is. I don't want to go in there and make like BS acting notes and everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But it's exactly that. The big thing I got is make a clear choice. Even Chad Stahelski told me the same thing. When I first worked with him way back on a Viz, he was like, you're doing this, but it's too big. Make it smaller. Okay. Like that's what I have to do. He didn't tell me what exactly I was doing.
Yeah.
He just said, it's too big. Whatever you're doing, make it smaller. It's too much. And especially working with other coordinators that are really big on performance, they'll always give you acting notes. And that's what I realized is they're not really giving you technique notes per se all the time. They're giving you acting notes. And then the next level of that is doing the technique good and acting through it. So I think some people just need to understand that it's okay to perform. It says some performer on our contracts, right? We're there to perform. So even if we're going to take like, someone pushes you and shoves you, you can't just sit there. Like you got to react to it. Like if someone knocked into you out of nowhere at the grocery store, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like you got to play something.
Yeah.
You can't just do it because that's what they tell you to do, or you got to hit your mark there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing in Vizes, right? Like you're seeing all the playback where it's like, I want to look, no, can you do it again? Yeah.
Totally.
It's just like, it's just, hey, be natural. Like it depends on the coordinator, but work with what they're giving you and embrace it. Even if it feels weird, you should feel uncomfortable because you're never going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's never going to cater to you too much. If you're doing your own practice stuff, sure. But even then you should be practicing how to be uncomfortable because you're always going to be uncomfortable.
Totally.
So I think, performance is a huge thing that, I feel like some people have embraced it way more than when we first started.
Yeah.
The acting side of it.
Definitely.
But I think it's definitely something that for any style, it doesn't have to be martial arts performance. It doesn't have to be, cowboy performance. It's like you're playing a character, which is essentially a real person, right? You're portraying something. So learn what that is and make choices and have fun and just, hey, if you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you're right, you're right. Yeah. Just try it.
Yeah. The performative thing is an interesting one because, for example, in the mocap world, there are a lot of stunt performers that can't do mocap because they're not able to physically emote everything that needs to be read in a mocap stage where like they're not capturing your face. They're not capturing everything. They're literally capturing like the movements. Sometimes they're tracking your facial markers, but I have seen some stunt guys that aren't able to do full mocap performance because they don't fully get into the performance side.
I see. That makes sense though.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's just like when you do vises.
Yeah.
Right? Like people come in and you've seen it. TV is a big one. They come in, I'm just here for a day.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in, I'm just here to get shot, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you have a tiny piece of the puzzle. I get it. But the last thing you want is to present a viz and a producer goes, what was that? And you're like, what was what?
Yeah.
Play that again. Because it's like, that's what they'll do. Why? Because they're looking at it from an acting and scene perspective, right? So I know as silly as it sounds, we're not the actors, but again, it says stunt performer on our contracts. The least you can do is show up to work and help out and perform.
100. I've been on a set before. I'm not going to blast the director, but he's a very famous director who also acts as well, and he's super successful. But we had a guy who wasn't able to perform a move like one of my guys in my PREVIS could. The coordinator had hired somebody else for the actual day that was a friend of his. But in the PREVIS, I used my friend because I was the one shooting the PREVIS.
I see.
Long story short, the guy could not perform the move the way that it was done in the PREVIS. So much so that the director pulled up the PREVIS and turned it around and said, "It doesn't look like this. Do I need to bring the actor out to do it?" And I was like mortified.
Wow.
Like, wow. Insane. And I felt like a little bit of, it was a weird situation for me because like I felt a little bit of like guilt in the sense of like, damn, I set this guy up in the sense that like I put out such a superior PREVIS product that he's not able to perform that way. But at the same time, I was also like, well, we should hire the right guys for the job because clearly they really dug what I shot in the PREVIS.
Right.
So yeah, it was a very unique experience on that one.
Yeah, man, that's hard, right? It's like, I was recently told by JJ Perry, right? It's like it's movie business, not movie friends.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, sorry of everyone that's heard me say this a million times to them recently. It really stuck with me because it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, of course you want to hire friends. Of course you want to hire people that deserve the job in the sense of like, they're a good person, they're working hard and getting and trying to get chances, but sometimes they're not right for the part.
Totally.
And it's not personal. It's a business thing. It's like, it could be a look, it could be a size, exactly what you're saying, skills. And you want to put the right people in the right spots so they work themselves out. Like if you're running around on set trying to do a million different things and, convey with the directors and producers or convey with your coordinator and be like, hey, what do you need? What's this? What's that? The last thing you want to do is constantly keep going back to your performers and check every single little detail.
Yeah.
You turn this way with your foot. Totally. No, I got to turn that way. No, your timing's, because then it freaks you out because then you're like, man, when they call action, I don't know if they're going to be on their mark. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to be safe with the actor. I don't know if they're going to commit to doing the fall. They might put their hands down for whatever, because they might get spooked. If you put the right person in the job, they're going to do that and then some.
Yeah.
They're going to go in, not just kill it, but excite everybody, perform.
Yeah.
But it always is. I remember being told, I had asked Chad Stahelski, because he had critiqued me, back in like 2012, and we're talking, and he had said, you go out and shoot always with your friends, which is great, and they're great martial artists, great performers. Why don't you try shooting without that?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what do you mean? And he's like, well, shoot with the guys that you perceive as cowboys or regular stunt people. Like,
see if you can make them look good.
Exactly, make them look good because it's like you're gonna have to do that with an actor or actress. Not every actor or actress is physically adept, and you can't be like hire somebody else.
Yeah,
it doesn't work that way, right? Yeah. So it is a give and take. Like you got to make people be their best, and if they're not, you got to inspire them to be their best.
Yeah,
because otherwise you constantly can't go, I need somebody else. So it's always tricky, You know, like what you're saying, like you felt like you sold a great product, and then you're like, oh man, you know?
Yeah, and I didn't hire the guy, so it was a tough situation for me.
Yeah,
but
it's rough.
Always be prepared, guys.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Always be prepared.
You never know.
Yeah, 100%. That's crazy, man. And so, like, at this point in your career, what is the ultimate goal? Are you still trying to pursue going up the ranks of the traditional route, which is sometimes fight coordinators, then become stunt coordinators or assistant stunt coordinators, and then from there, some guys try to go second unit director?
Yeah.
What is your end goal?
I would say that I'm trying to do that full route in a way. Because that's kind of the traditional route. And, you know, of course, I'd love to get into DGA one day or any of that kind of stuff, but time and place, right? It's like I've worked on a few jobs recently where I think I really, really wanted to at some point be a stunt coordinator. But I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty good being a fight coordinator right now. And not just because of like the responsibilities at hand, but just because you forget that there's so much more involved than what you see on Instagram, on social media, whatever, right? There's so much more involved, so much business logistics, just as much as there's safety logistics, and you still got to present dynamic action.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with learning and just experiencing it and seeing my peers come up, even if they come up ahead of me, because it's like, well, I want to see what they get themselves into, and I want to learn from that, good or bad, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would say hopefully I would love to direct at some point, but at least into the stunt career, I'd love to be eventually a second unit director and just direct, and because it's always fun creating. It's like the next level of doing what I'm doing right now, right? Going out and shooting in the woods or the street or whatever. If you're like, yeah, man, come second unit of this movie I'm directing. I'm like, cool, great. You know, like it's like the same thing. Like, what scene do you need? Awesome. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, we can have fun and make something cool.
And make more money.
Exactly. Always the goal. Just so you know, everybody.
I'm going to tell you something Jeff Amato told me a long time ago that stuck with me, which was I was talking to him about getting into DGA and stuff. And I was like, what's one of your biggest regrets or advice that you would give me? And he goes, get into DGA ASAP and max out and get double pension. And I was like, oh, I never even thought of that, sir. Wow. He's like, imagine that. If you can get in young enough and you max out double pension, DGA and SAG, you'll be chilling. Yeah. And I was like, goddamn. Noted. Wow. So now I'm on a race. Yeah. Well, you know, that's the goal now.
Understandably, I get it.
Yeah. That's the race now.
You know, thanks to our fine union. But,
right.
You know, yeah, man, it's wild that when we first started, you know, it's like stunt coordinator was the highest position, maybe second unit. Totally. Now everyone's first trying unit, to be stunt coordinator, second unit, and exactly first unit. Oh. And I agree. It's like, I don't want to be coordinating forever. It's nothing against the people that want to do that. No. But, you know, for the people that do want to do that, I want to hire those people and I want to just direct and be like, man, you guys do your thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then hopefully if they want to direct, like, absolutely, man. It's like, I always use the example of like, everyone gets to ride the horse once, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone gets to ride the pony at the carnival, the horse at the carnival. Hopefully people wait their turn, but sometimes people want to pull you off the horse because they're tired of you riding on it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you're going to get your turn. You know what I mean? Like, you can be impatient all you want, but you're going to get your turn. But is that horse going to let you ride it?
Yeah.
Because you can get on and be like, yeah, I'm excited. And that horse is like, hit the F off me.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the thing is, it's easy from the outside to see what you think is going to be there until you're in it. It's like you were saying about the fight coordinating.
Yeah.
It's easy for people to see your job or my job or anybody else's job and be like, I could do that. But it's a different animal until you're in it consistently over and over and over again. And then people wonder why I come in the mornings like, you're like, oh, did you have a good day?
Yeah.
Yes. You know?
Exactly.
But that's the price we paid. That's what we signed up for.
It's the life we chose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like you said, hey, if we can race up, you know, comfortably and get to that first unit, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just create and have fun.
That would be the way.
And make money.
That would definitely be the way, man. That would definitely be the goal. And I think it's cool, man. More than anything, it's just about like, just continuing this creative process. And just real quick, like I got to give a shout out to someone that we work with quite often. And I'm only saying this because I want to inspire a lot of the other people out there. About like 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3, I started like doing a morning workout class at JAM with a few of the boys. Yeah. And you were aware of this. Lawyer would come help me out. Had a few girls in there, had a few guys in there. I literally was just teaching them like my fighting techniques, things that I thought would help me. And I was also teaching them like how to shoot. Yeah. And I told them, yo guys, there's a shortage of people that do what I do, that does what Manny and Vlad does. And guess what? Eventually when we're so busy, we can't pass it to each other if we're working, you know? Yeah. No one shot fights except for one kid named Kyle Potter. Yep. And Kyle would weekly come up to me and show me a new fight he did. And some of the stuff in the beginning was not that great, but he was doing it. And then it started getting better and better. And then he upped his equipment game, like you said. Like he started with what he had and then upped his equipment game. And long story short, guys, he just left on his second movie run right now to go shoot PREVIS. And that doesn't just happen by accident.
No, man. It does not.
You can't get better at shooting PREVIS by not shooting PREVIS.
Exactly.
You can't get better at shooting fights by not shooting fights. Exactly. But if you do, the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely.
My man is now literally stepping into the same fields that we are.
Yep.
And it's super cool to see.
It is, man. Yeah. I just met with him earlier today before he had to leave.
That's why I wanted to bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just giving him that kind of same advice. It's like I tell this to all the guys that are shooting nowadays: Sawyer, Jaquan, Jerry Quill, Kyle, Andrew Franklin, Micah, Tony Vittorio, and then there's other guys in Atlanta. You know, Felix and Ruben.
Yeah. Dave Conk's out there.
Yeah, Dave Conk is out there. Kirk Jenkins. Yeah. Nate Perry. Yep. You know, they're all learning under Greg and Sam. And then you have people in New York, the Ing brothers, Aaron Armstrong, Steve Izzy, James Newman, you know, all these different people from different areas everywhere. And then you have all the worldwide people. Yeah. Everyone's coming up in some way.
Totally, dog.
My whole thing that I've eventually just tried to learn more and more, it's like, well, like you said, right? At some point, we're going to be competition. It's inevitable. But instead of undercutting each other, instead of trying to get the job over each other, it's like, well, let's work the same job. Or you get that job, I'm going to go do this, you know, we'll bounce back and forth.
Yep.
Because it's all money at the end of the day.
Yep.
And if you really want to make art, go make it on your own. But that's what I'm saying is like, let's get the practice in now. Let's help each other out. So when it's your turn to first unit direct, you know what I'm saying? Like you want people on your back being like, man, help me out. So I can focus on making my art and doing my thing. You know, that's like what Chad and Dave did. That's what all these guys have done to come up. And it's just funny to me that everybody nowadays wants to be the fight coordinator. They want to be the second unit director. They want to be the director. And it's like, it's going to happen. It's just, are you really ready when that happens?
Yes.
And hopefully when it does happen, have you been nice enough to everybody that they're willing to come in?
Yeah.
Because
and be a soldier for you.
Exactly. Because it's like, if you're not, you're going to learn really fast.
100%.
I always tell everybody, reality in life checks you when you least expect it. Nobody has to do it for you. Nobody's got to give you the lecture talk.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the doors just close.
Yep.
So hopefully, be real. Check yourself every now and then. I try to do that more often than not. And just be honest and just do your thing.
Dope.
That's all you can do, right?
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Hell yeah, man. And so this is one of the things that I always am curious with other fight guys that come on the show, which is, what do you think of the current state of action with where it's at? And do you see it going in any specific direction? And I only ask that because a lot of us have been having off-camera discussions where things kind of go in phases, like you talked about earlier with like Ang Lee and stuff like that. There was a time period back when there was Crouching Tiger, Kill Bill. Yeah. And then everyone got obsessed with like The Raid, right? Everyone loved The Raid. Yeah, I wanted to be The Raid.
I love Eco. Those guys are great.
No, they're amazing. But like as a genre wise, that was like a hot topic.
Yes.
And then everyone became obsessed with like John Wick status and like trying to throw in judo, or more than anything, I guess at the same time, like doing longer, wider one-ers with your actress, like Atomic Blonde and John Wick together. Yep. So what do you think about the current state of action? Where do you think it's going? And do you think it's going to take any pattern shift back at all, you know?
You know, I'm a big history guy. I love just looking at history. And so I looking at film and action history, all that stuff. So what I've noticed, just my humble opinions and observations, that like you said, when we were coming up as kids, it was like The Matrix and Kill Bill and Crouching Tiger. And then it became like Born, right? Born was the big thing, as Jeff
Master
went
Amada.
through. Exactly. You know, Master Amada created such a trend out of, let's say, accident. But, you know, like he had a vision and then the director took it a different way.
Totally.
But that created a trend.
Yeah.
Then the Tony Jaa and then the Raid and all this stuff. So what I'm getting at is like everybody puts their own styles out in some way or form, but it's always taken from something else.
Yeah.
Like, I know a big thing in our industry is people knock the Hong Kong style and the Hong Kong cinema, right? In some form or fashion. Oh, it's too martial arts, it's too this. It's all been done, da-da-da. Yes, but at the same time, I think what this current generation is doing is we take from bases like that. Sure, we do it literally at times, but then we put our own spin on it. And I feel like that's what we've done. And then by doing other action design, we've learned to add those elements, more acting. Maybe it's funnier, maybe it's more serious, maybe all these different things. So I think and I hope what is eventually happening is all these people, kind of like 80s Hong Kong, is going to create their own style and format. Everyone's going to have a different, you know, branch on the tree. And everyone's going to come and do their own version of stuff. Because if you and I were to do the Raid, you do it your way and I do it my way. Totally. But I think that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no better. It's just what sticks.
Yeah.
And I think when people are so stuck in the way, it's like, but there's always different ways. I mean, look at the way movies are being shot now. I mean, even, you know, Birdman did everything in a oneer, right?
Totally.
Multiple oneers.
Yeah, 1917.
Yeah. But look at the way that's been done and the experience and everything that you get. And it's like, you wouldn't have been able to do that 10 years from before. But now everything is just so elevated and advanced. And I feel like action is going that way. Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of going back old school. Like the actors are doing more of the heavy lifting. Because that's how it was back in the, you know, the 70s, well, 60s, 70s, 80s, but even before that, in the 40s and 50s with
before
the
cowboy
stuff.
Switches.
Exactly. You know, you had your give and takes. But what the evolution with us is probably CG, right?
Yeah.
Like all the Marvel stuff. But I think like anything else, if you give it a realism, some form of people can understand, they're going to get behind it, even if it's all CG. You know, it's like, why do people like video games? Because there's a form of realism in there. So I think when people learn to embrace that kind of stuff, it's like, bro, it's going to be crazy and wild in the next 10 years. And then, you know, whatever it'll go back to, whatever it's supposed to be at the end. You know, hopefully we're directing by that point.
Hell yeah.
And not dealing with all that. But yeah, I just think people need to be okay with being themselves and then projecting that out. I think it's great that everybody has different styles because I watch all that stuff all the time. I watch all the young kids. I'm learning from them as much as kids may tell me, and that's really weird to say, by the way, because I'm only
so
like,
crazy.
Going to be 35 this year. It's like, but they're 10 years younger than me. They're 15 years younger than me sometimes. And I'm like, whoa.
Technically could have had them.
You're right. It's like, oops, sorry. It's like, this is weird. But I'm learning from them because they're doing all this cool stuff that I wouldn't think of doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's all good. It's just time and place. I only have more experience because I put in my time and place, just like you do. It takes time. Like, people forget about that. I started in 2005.
Yeah.
It's 2020.
It's 2020, guys.
You guys were shooting in what, 98, 99?
Yeah, technically speaking, yeah. And
right?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
1999
like,
we start shooting.
That takes time. It doesn't just happen magically.
Yeah.
And some people, sure, they may fast track to fight coordinating or stunt coordinating, but even so, it's like only the very best stay afloat.
Totally.
Because they understand not just the game, but what's needed of them.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, hey man, we're all going to get our chance. It's just a matter if you're ready when that happens.
Hell yeah.
So be grateful.
Yeah, 100, dog. No, I think that's super good advice, man. Super good advice. And one of the things, like we sort of touched on it, but we didn't. But like one of the questions I always end this out with to our friends, and some have answers and some don't, which is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And then where do you see yourself in the next 10? With the hopes that we'll be able to revisit this conversation. Ooh. And see if it's interesting. See if we've exceeded those or passed those even quicker, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in 5 years, hopefully just fight coordinating more and then getting into assistant stunt coordinating more. Yeah, I camera operated on 2 different shows. I'd love to get back on camera, just
super dope.
That world, which is completely different, you know, and that's a different animal, and I just love playing with that. And then, yeah, maybe in 10 years, hopefully, you know, DJ and maybe first unit or maybe second unit for other first unit people, you know, like, I just love learning. I'm not in a rush to grow so fast. There's just so much stuff to learn. It's like, I'm happy helping friends and just figuring it out.
Yeah.
So I feel like when it's my turn to first unit, like I was saying, hopefully I'll have the right people and I'll just come in and I'll be like, here you go.
Yep.
Bye. You know, like,
Totally.
so yeah, hopefully in that time. And then, you know, raising my family, which has been great. And that also makes a difference. I feel it's like, that's why I get it. When I was told when I was younger, hey, when you're young, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Totally, man. Cause not that obviously it's anything against my family. It's wonderful, but it's true. You're just a different animal. Everything gets sharper. Everything gets more focused. That's what I feel, because now it's not for me.
It's not just for you.
It's for them.
Yeah.
And my being away or my taking my risk or chances or my trying to make my art reflects on them. So I'm super thankful of my wife, Kana, who has to stay at home and take care of everything by herself. And I get that sometimes that's expected in this society and business. But it's like, well, what if it was reversed? What if she's a stunt woman? I'm the dude.
Yeah.
And I got to do all that by myself, you know? And, or what if we're both working stunt people or film people? How are we going to raise the kid? It's like, we have to do what we got to do. And I completely agree when at a certain point, we're just playing pretend, man. Like it's not that serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can all make money, have a good time, do cool stuff, and go back home. I think we all deserve to do that. So I'm thankful for my wife for letting me have a big dream.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Totally.
And go play with my toys. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah.
So hell yeah.
That's dope, man. Well, more than anything, I appreciate you making the time on your limited visit out here. We've been trying to do this for months, guys. Like almost a year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true.
To be honest, we're on episode 57, so I definitely reached out to you within the first couple of them. So it's crazy to see, though, but it's good problems to have. Being busy is a blessing for both of us.
Hopefully.
And yeah, more than anything, man, I appreciate you lending some invaluable advice to our listeners and to the new generation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And I appreciate all the times that we worked together over the years, from shooting stuff for fun to doing movies for India like Robot 2.0.
I was going to say, you gave me my first actual fight coordinating job. So thank you for that. And thank you for Lee Whitaker as well for allowing me to go out and help him. That's right. You and James Young gave me that. So I'll always remember that. And I always remember when you were prepping Fast 7, just asking me to come and help out. And that's how I met Steve Brown.
100%, man.
So, isn't that crazy?
Such a small world. And then you and I got to actually previs a show for the highest budget Indian movie to date called Robot 2.0.
Yep.
And we didn't even have to go to India. We got to shoot it at Jam.
It was good. But sorry, Brian Slory, we sent you to India.
Sorry, Brian. But you got to make some money. I know that helped you.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Hell yeah, man. It's so full circle, man. And I hope hope there'll be many more to come over the years.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And hell yeah to you for just giving this platform for everybody.
Thanks,
as you know, everyone knows it's really cool to see, not just from older generation, but our generation, to hear everybody's stories. Everybody's different. And it's awesome because even the friends I know, like you just had Steve Brown, had some other people, I was like, damn, I remember when those guys told me those stories. It's wild.
It's crazy.
So much stuff has happened. Yeah. You know, so it's super cool.
Hell yeah.
To see that. So thank you for that.
It's almost like we're all so busy these days, it takes a podcast for us to sit down.
Right.
So hell yeah, man. Well, like I said, let's not make this the last. And enjoy the rest of your trip out here in LA. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Sick. Thanks
before you get out of here, can you just look into that camera and let people know where they can follow you and stay up to date with your journey?
I don't have a Facebook, so that doesn't exist. But I have an Instagram at Emmanuel Manzanares, EMMANUEL, together. And then the YouTube is youtube.com LPP Stunts Chicago.
Hell
you can
yeah.
find everything from there.
And we'll throw it on the screen. Hell yeah, guys. So as always, guys, please be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe for brand new episodes each and every week. Join us every Monday for Jam Breakdowns and every Friday for brand new JAMCast, interviewing influential members of the movement community like Mr. Emmanuel Manzanares himself. So as always, guys, I got to give a very special shout out to Mr. Connor Simon for running the cameras in the Switcher app as always. I got to give a shout out to our sponsor, Inner West Hemp. Please be sure to use the code JAM for 15% off on their website for all products. And as always, I got to give a very special shout out to our guest this week, Mr. Emmanuel Manny Manzanares.
Thank you. Sorry if I rambled.
No worries, guys. And as always, guys, coming through, I'm your host, Travis Wong. Thanks for joining us here on another JAMcast. Till next time, see you all soon. Peace.